There's a penalty for that?
Yeah, you do that, you go to the box, 2 minutes by yourself, and you feel shame, and then you get free.
This is CBJ in 30.
Anything you folks want to know about the fascinating world of pro hockey, here we go.
Tweet your questions by using the hashtag CBJIN30.
We'd like to remind you folks, keep your questions within the boundaries of good taste.
Here's your host, Bob McElligott.
It is already one of those days. Already one of those days. You know what those days are? Besides Mondays? They're those days that they start out great and they deteriorate rapidly. How about that for a couple of big words to start the show? How will that be? And I'll tell you why. Well, I can't tell you why they deteriorate rapidly, but it's one of those days. It rains all night, it storms, wakes me up in the middle of the night, all that kind of stuff, right? And then, which was fine. That's okay. I don't mind being up at like 10 to 5 in the morning when I don't need to be. Anyway, so you wake up in the morning, the rain is over, take the kids to school, everything's great, engage in some great conversation, feeling good about the day. And then today happens to be the day at my kids' school. They have a grandparent luncheon. Now, my kids have no grandparents within 4 hours of this place. So guess what they get? They get to have lunch with me. That's like being on Let's Make a Deal and saying, do you want to keep the $100 in your hand or take what's behind curtain number 2? And you take the curtain and you open it up, and it's a kiddie pool, one of those inflatable ones that actually even has a hole in it. That's what they got today. They got me instead. But anyway, so I go there. Of course, there's this time frame, and I'm thinking I can jam everything in. And then they let them out of class 5 to 10 minutes late. Like, what are they doing? What are you teaching? It's the middle of May. School's going to be out in 2 weeks or whatever it is. Let's just be honest about it. You're watching movies, not assigning as much homework. It's that time of year. But no, today's the day they're late. So, anyway, it's just that kind of day. So just running around. Of course, when I'm done with this, and I have absolutely nothing to do. So I guess there is a bright side to it after all. Hope you had a great Mother's Day. Moms out there, and your dads out there, and your kids getting through it. That didn't sound good. I didn't mean it like that. It made me think about something, though, this morning. Because yesterday, of course, I was watching some baseball yesterday, and all the guys are using the pink bats. And I was wondering how many guys will use the pink bat and get like 2 or 3 hits today, and then they're going to want to keep using the pink bat because it's obviously lucky. My son had a ball game yesterday. I should have gotten him a pink bat and pink wristbands and a pink glove and a pink hat if it was lucky. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. But anyway, it made me think of a story. When I was in Syracuse, one time we had a breast cancer awareness game, and all the players taped their sticks with that pink tape. They taped the blades of the sticks and the shaft of the sticks. They all had pink tape on it. And they won that game, and Zenon Konopka was our captain. And his rule was, boys, we got to use the pink tape until we lose. And we went on the road, and the equipment manager didn't bring any pink tape. So I think we still won. But it was not a good day. It was not a good day for that equipment guy who was not so subtly reminded that we were supposed to use the pink tape. Where is it? There was no pink tape. All right. Back here at Nationwide Arena today for CBJ in 30. You know the drill. You send your questions using the hashtag CBJ in 30, CBJIN30 on Twitter, and I answer your questions. Rob Mixer is screening again for me today. By the way, the members of Rob's family who continue to beg for him to have a microphone on Twitter, please stop. Please stop. Let's not ruin a good thing, okay? The good thing is Rob talks. You can kind of hear him in the background, but I can cut him off at any time. Let's just leave it like that. Leave it that way. This is a show where you have to earn your stripes. It's just the way it is. Marcus Stevenson didn't cut it as a screener. He's out. Rob's still here. In fact, Marcus is sick over that. He's not even in today. That's how, that's the big effect he's had. So he took it hard. But you know what? That's pro sports. You either got it or you don't got it. That's great English, isn't it? So, we gotta move on. We gotta keep on keeping on. All right, Rob, what do we got today? What's first? Trevor Lavoie. Brandon Dubinsky really stepped up into the leadership role this past season. Do you think he is a good candidate for the Blue Jackets captain? Tougher to answer. My initial, right off the top of my head answer is, if he was a good candidate, he would have already had that done prior to the season or at some point during the season. However, that doesn't mean that he's not a good candidate for it, and that's not to say that the viewpoint couldn't have changed throughout the end of the regular season and the playoffs. So I guess the best answer is I don't know. Personally, I would still say there's got to be something that keeps him from having that role right now, and I don't know what it is. So I don't expect that to happen. However, if it does, then again, would I be totally shocked? No, because of what he brought to the table during the playoffs and, the role he played and the way he played it and all of that stuff. So I know that's a vague answer, but you're asking me and I'm giving you my opinion. So that's what I think. Eric St. John. I saw this one earlier today. I love it. Did the Rangers trade Nash? Watching broadcast of Game 6 and never heard his name called. Well, here's what the thing is, Eric. If you want to find him, you have to look near the boards. Okay? You look on the perimeter. Don't look in front of the net. Don't waste your time looking in front of the net. You got to look on the perimeter. Listen, here's the deal. And because I saw this question earlier today, I put a lot of thought into this one. Here's my take on this whole thing. I love Rick Nash as a person. Notice how I started with that? And I really do, and I mean that. And he's a great guy. He's a great person. He did a lot of great things in this city. Probably will continue to do so. I don't want to take away from anything about this guy's personality or the kind of person that he is. Now, that being said, this is the truth. When I got here 5 seasons ago, I was so excited to watch this guy play every night. I was so excited to see a guy that was one of the best players in the world play every night. And there were more than a few nights where I don't know, did I expect too much? Or did he give too little? Or was it somewhere in the middle? I could never figure that out. I know Sidney Crosby's getting a lot of grief right now for having 1 goal in the playoffs. But there are still nights that he does a lot of things. And as the best player in the game, quote unquote, he does a lot of things that maybe don't translate into points, but they help other people get points. He's one of those players that makes the guys around him better. And with Rick Nash, I always wondered, what's going on? It was always, well, you need to have a centerman to play with him. Well, Sidney Crosby plays with Brian Gibbons and makes him look good at times. And who is Brian Gibbons? Pretty much a nobody right now in the NHL. May never be a nobody. It might just be on a long list of guys that played alongside of Sidney Crosby. And I know Rick's not a centerman, but here's the funny thing about it. I was reading Jim Matheson's work in the Edmonton Journal, and it said the same thing. Well, he really doesn't have good guys to play with. What? Are you kidding me? What, so Brad Richards is near the end of his career and he's – but see, how many times do you go down that road and say, well, with a better supporting cast? No, I don't get it. And here's the thing that used to drive me crazy, and maybe it was the setup of the power play, but I could never understand why Rick Nash was so far away from the net on the power play when he was here. Why? A guy that big? Why wasn't he parked right down by the post? Why wasn't he there to redirect shots? Why wasn't he there to pick up the rebounds off the goalie and get those garbage goals on the power play? Why is he working the half wall? Why is he out doing that? As big as he is, screening the goalie, picking up the trash? That's a hard area to play in. And I don't know if that's the reason why or not. I don't. I would love to know. But I'll tell you this. The stuff that went, I don't want to say unnoticed because you noticed it. And a lot of people noticed it. But a lot of things that never got truly exposed in Columbus are now thoroughly exposed in New York City. And they are breaking down his game almost shift by shift. And there's not a lot of positives being said about it right now. And I don't know. We're going to find out if he's the kind of guy that responds to that and turns it around, or the response is it gets worse. And right now, he has yet to kind of turn it around in these playoffs anyway. Now, his team is a totally different thing. I told you when the Penguins went up 2-1 and they won back-to-back games in Pittsburgh and New York, I thought that series was over. I also said that it was probably too premature to call it over. But then the Penguins went up 3-1, and it looked like it was going to be a slam dunk no-brainer. All of a sudden, the New York Rangers have forced a Game 7 by winning back-to-back games. And Pittsburgh, they simply did not show up on their home ice in Game 5. They didn't. I don't know who those imposters were they sent to play the game. Or maybe they weren't imposters. Maybe that's who they are. We're going to find out in a Game 7 that they have to play at home. But the Rangers, the Martin St. Louis situation, it's so sad. I mean, just number one, to lose your mom suddenly is one thing. To lose your mom suddenly right before Mother's Day, have a game on Mother's Day, that's got to be tough. It's got to be really, really tough. And that team has rallied around him. He had a goal last night. And they're, they kind of, there are two things. I think, they've grabbed onto that as a team. That's given them some kind of a rallying cry. And also then when the Penguins didn't play very well in Pittsburgh, you've got one team that's playing desperate hockey and has a rallying cry. You have another team that thinks all they have to do is show up and they move on to the next round. And then that team that thought they just had to show up gets whacked. And the other team is going, hey, you know what? Well, as easy as that was, I bet we can do that again, which they did yesterday. So, I don't know. That's going to be a very interesting Game 7. Very interesting. I heard somebody in Pittsburgh the other day say that Bob Johnson once said the sure ticket to the Stanley Cup final was to have one short series. This is when it was 3-1. And they thought that short series was the Rangers series. Yeah, they thought it was that's a good point, Rob. They thought it was the Blue Jackets. And this still gets under my skin, maybe it shouldn't. They still think that had Fleury not messed up that Game 4 puck, that series is done in 5 games. They still think, they don't think that, anyway, doesn't matter. He did screw it up. Screwed it up. So anyway, so they were saying, well, you have to have one short series. Well, now they've taken it to the max. And whether they prevail or not is one thing. Whether they get the Bruins or the Canadians would have to force a Game 7 as well by getting a win now. So times have changed. And I'm telling you, there are going to be a lot of people in the Steel City tomorrow that aren't going to be able to eat, sleep, I almost said or drink. They actually might drink to compensate for the eating and sleeping lack thereof. It's going to be a nervous time tomorrow night. And they don't have a great record in that building. They played much better at the old building than they play at that building. And I know this building is still new and they're young into it, but they're not. I'm telling you, the numbers don't look great for them. But you don't play the game by the numbers. All you new stats people out there, don't play the game by the numbers. Play it on the ice. Sometimes those numbers come into play. Matt Cooksey says, with the way the season ended, what are the expectations for the upcoming season in Columbus? Get into the playoffs and win a round or 2 or 3 or 4. That's simple. It's not close but no cigar. It's the build. Every year is the build. Last year just missing the playoffs. This year getting into the playoffs, losing in 6 games. Now it's the build. Chad Garvin says, put on your pretend GM hat for us. Hold on. All right, it's on. It's a little small. What kind of contract do you propose for Ryan Johansson? What gets done? I propose I don't propose a long-term contract. I don't propose one of those 6-7-year deals for the max amount of money to buy out the free agency years. I offer him probably a 2-year deal. And I say, you know what, Ryan, you had a fantastic season. You were great. You are such a big part of this organization and the future of it. But here's what I need you to do. You got to go out and do it again. Do it again. Show me you can do it again. And then do it again after that. Because without consistency, there's no sense in getting locked up into a long-term deal, buying out free agent years that you don't have to, and paying a lot of money. You give them a fair price, you give them a couple-of-year deal, you make them prove it. And if you say, well, why would you do that? Ask Sergei Bobrovsky why. Because they just did it to him last summer. You're saving money toward the cap. That's money you can put toward other assets that you need to make your team better. And you make those guys prove it. Because guess what? Welcome to real life. Many times in real life, you have to prove your worth, and then you get paid for it. You have to prove you're the real deal, and then you get paid for it. And those teams that tend to pay before there's proof wind up down the road facing a somewhat crisis because they have too much money wrapped up in a player that was a flash in the pan and didn't prove that he could do it consistently. And you don't want to be that team. And you don't want to be that player. Ryan Johansson doesn't want to be that player. I think he needs challenged. I really, really, really think he needs challenged. Look where this guy was last year. He was in Springfield for the playoffs. They healthy scratched him in the playoffs. Healthy scratched him. He came to camp this year, was basically told, you have to earn a spot. If you think this guy was guaranteed a spot in July and August and was settling into a place to live and getting himself all nice and comfy and cozy, that was not the case. He was told, you've got to earn it. You come into camp. Here's what kind of goes by the wayside. He came into this camp in the same boat as Boone Jenner. He had to earn his spot. Didn't matter what he did last year, and he did some great things last year. But the way he finished in the American Hockey League resonated. You don't get healthy scratch as a former number 1 pick, 4th overall. You get healthy scratch in the American Hockey League playoffs? You better prove it. You better come out and prove it. And he did. He earned his spot. He earned being the top center on this team. And he'll earn a pay raise. But he's got to prove that he will do it consistently. I won't even say can do it consistently because I know he can. I know for sure he can. Will he? That's the question that is fair to ask. And that is the type of contract that should be proposed to him and that I feel will be proposed to him to say, here's a fair pay raise. You're not going to be begging on the street for food. You're going to be taken care of. But here's the deal. You have got to do it again. And then do it again. And guess what? Player wants to do it again and again. Nobody wants to be a flash in the pan. Nobody wants to, everybody wants to have a comfortable living. I get that. But nobody wants to be that guy they're saying, well, what a waste of money that was. There's too much pride in this stuff. Nobody wants to be that guy. He's not going to be that guy, by the way. He's going to be the real deal. And whatever it takes to get to that point, however they structure a contract and whatever he has to do, I think he'll do it. Blaze says, with the success this season and a gritty playoff series, do the Blue Jackets add from outside or grow this group together? They'll do more growing. If they add from the outside, it'll be peripheral. They won't, you got Nathan Horton last year. He'll come back healthy. That's your big free agent signing. If you add a guy here or there, maybe I don't know, maybe you add an older guy for an Adrian Aucoin type guy like they did a couple of years ago. Maybe that kind of a thing. A guy that's going to bring a little bit of that leadership that they might lack, just a little, but not paying. They're not going to break the bank and pay somebody a bunch of money to. They've got a young group. They want to develop together. There's a core. And that's the way of the game now. That's the way of every game now. At every league. Look around. Look at baseball. How many guys have come up through the minor league system and have played together and are now in the big leagues? And they try to lock them up as long as they're being consistent. They try to lock them up and they try to keep that 4, 5, 6 guys together and then fill in around it. That's the way of the world now. Major league sports. That's how it goes. Next, Jamie says, who do you think will target in free agency? Stastny, Molson, maybe a shutdown D, maybe just depth guys. Now this is going to go against what I just said. I don't know what it would cost to get Stasny in free agency, and I don't know. Maybe I don't know if they would look at something like that. Maybe, maybe not. It all depends on the price. I don't think it'll be depth. I don't think they're going to add. Well, if you add a defenseman, will he be a top 4? Well, maybe with Nikitin not necessarily getting a new offer. And I've said before, Dalton Prout's ready to go into that role. But, there's if there's a chance to get somebody at a reasonable price that is a little bit more experienced than him and, gives you a backup plan there, that's possible too. Something like that. Again, I don't see it. Like Molson, Stasny, I don't see it, but stranger things have always happened. Who's next? CBJ Therapy. When the Blue Jackets are on the clock at the draft, what is better strategy? Best available talent or drafting need? Rob Mixer tells me Yarmo is the best available talent. I would agree with that. I still think that. I think that's the way to go. They just had the NFL draft last week. Steelers are getting pummeled for taking Ryan Shazier from Ohio State when they needed a wide receiver and a cornerback. Why would you take a linebacker? Best available guy on the board at that point for them. That's what they did. That's what a lot of teams do. And here's the deal. And again, because of where you are, how long ago was the conversation, well, you have to take a center. You have no center depth in the organization. You've got to do that. Well, now you've got centers coming out your ears. You don't have to do that. Got a lot of guys on the blue line. You've got wingers, maybe, again, you can take the best available guy. Doesn't matter what he plays. If he's the best available, you take the best available. Was Nail Yakupov the best available player? Or was Ryan Murray? What they thought in Pittsburgh on that draft day and what people think now might be two different thoughts. Or maybe some people thought then what they think now and somebody else thought differently, and that's why they didn't act in accordance with the thought process. Mark Scheig says, what are the biggest things in your mind that constitute being a leader today? How much does the Blue Jackets do the Blue Jackets have now? Being a leader today in hockey. Unselfish. If you're going to speak up in the room and call people out, you have to be you can't jump up and yell at other people for doing things that you don't do. So you have to play a complete game. You have to be a heart and soul guy. You have to have – this is kind of a tough question because I think in hockey it's so much tougher than the other sports because – and I'm talking as being – let's just go from being a captain. There are so many things that you are responsible for. You're responsible for your own play on the ice. You're responsible for those around you and their play on the ice. You're responsible for if you feel a coach is doing something that is not resonating well with the team, you become the guy that has to go in and address that matter. If there have been this sound, I don't want this to sound like guys are prima donnas, but let's say you just had 4 2-hour practices in a row, and you go and you say, hey, listen, these guys are beat. We got to have a day off, or we got to have an optional, or tomorrow can we just go out and do a hard 20-minute skate and then be done with it? They've got to do that. They have to have the pulse of every guy around them. They have to know the pulse of the room. They have to deal with the media. You have to be, as a leader, you can't be the guy that ducks behind the door and goes to the training room every day. You got to be there, win or lose. You've got to answer the questions. A lot of them are repeats. A lot of them are dumb. When they say there's no such thing as a dumb question, go into a locker room after a game. You'll hear a ton of them. It's a lie. There's plenty of dumb questions. I ask them. I ain't going to lie. Not going to lie. If I ask 1,000,000 questions, 800,000 of them will be good. That leaves 200,000 that stink. But I know that up front, and I'm okay with that. Just like a guy's going to turn the puck over, maybe he turns it over 3 times in a game. In the next game, he turns it over none. Same thing. But those are the things you have to do as a leader. You have so many responsibilities. Hey, putting together, figuring out what the guys need as a group. Hey, you know what? We're going to have a team dinner. We're going to bring wives and girlfriends. We're going to do that on Wednesday. You wouldn't believe it. And if you say, well, why would any of that stuff be important? Because when you play a game like this, And it's all for one for all. And when it's a family atmosphere, and when the better you get along off the ice means the better you play on the ice, all of that stuff is important. It's not showing up, lacing up your skates, playing a game, giving an interview, and going home. There's a lot more to it than that. And if you want the young guys to be good players someday, you've got to set that example. You've got to do it early. Jody Shelley and I talked throughout the entire course of the year. One of the guys that he talks about a lot is Chris Pronger and the type of captain he was with the Philadelphia Flyers. And he's an old-school, no-nonsense guy, and he doesn't put up with any shenanigans. And he lets them know that right up front. And if that means embarrassing you in front of everybody, so be it. Because Jody also likes to say this, truth in every joke. Your job is to pick out the truth and fix it, or it ain't going to be funny next time. Let's see. Panayotova, is that what that is? Something like that. Anyway, Twitter. How do you come up with crazy sayings when the Jackets score like jacked up gym socks? Oh, well, it's just, I don't know. It just happens. Stuff I hear, something somebody says, maybe a line in a song, maybe something on TV, maybe a movie. You never know. But the way it always strikes me is this makes absolutely no sense, so it would draw somebody's attention. Because those things that make no sense draw my attention. And obviously, yours as well. Alexis says, do you think next season will be harder due to the East knowing the Blue Jackets play, or easier due to the Blue Jackets knowing how the East plays? Well, I think it'll be easier for the Blue Jackets from their standpoint, being more familiar with their Eastern Conference opponents. However, being that you made the playoffs and a lot of those teams didn't, again, you go from being the hunter to the hunted. And I'm just sitting here looking at the banners in Nationwide Arena, and right next to the Blue Jackets banner, I see the Carolina Hurricanes. Well, they've got a new GM. They'll have a new coach. They'll be gunning for the Blue Jackets. New Jersey didn't make the playoffs. They'll be gunning. New York Islanders will get John Tavares back healthy this year. They'll be gunning. The Rangers now have a good rivalry with the Blue Jackets. The Flyers, they're going to be gunning for you. There's the Penguins, who now that's a legit rivalry. The Capitals didn't make the playoffs. They're going to be looking. I just go down the list. Might leave Buffalo off the list for another year or two, but you never know. But no, and I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek. It's going to get, everybody gets better. Everybody's goal is to get better. And now you've got to keep that foothold. Blue Jackets don't want to be a wild card team next year. They want to be one of the top three in the division. They want to control their destiny a little bit more. Probably would like to have home ice advantage in a playoff round. So that's where they go from there. Who do I have tonight, Rob wants to know. Who's playing? Kidding. Montreal-Boston. Montreal-Boston tonight. I am going to take Montreal's at home. It's really tough to play there. I just get the feeling that series is going to go 7 games. I do. I really do. And I still think Boston has the advantage with that last home game. But I do think that the Habs are going to push that one to 7 games. I think, and again, this is like, when I say this, you're going to say, thank you, Mr. Obvious. I think P.K. Subban's going to have another big game tonight. That's just the way the playoffs have been for him. He's been outstanding. So I think he has a big game. I think the Canadiens force the 7th game on the Boston Bruins, which means that both teams that wind up in the Eastern Conference Final are going to be beaten up because they're both going to come off a 7-game series. That's what I think. In the West, Ducks and Kings play tonight. John Gibson back in net tonight? If John Gibson isn't back in net tonight for the Anaheim Ducks, if he is not, I would almost want to call Bruce Boudreau myself and say why. And it wasn't so much with him. He made some great saves, don't get me wrong. But if you watched that game the other night and watched how his team played in front of him, whenever these guys tell you, well, we don't play any different in front of this guy than we do this guy. Baloney. Yes, you do. And that's why a coach will make a goalie switch throughout the course of a game. Or that's why he'll start a goalie in a particular game. Because you do play differently. Because when you've got your main guy back there that you rely upon day in and day out, And when you start slacking off because you're expecting him to pick it all up behind you, and all of a sudden they rip him out of the net and they put the other guy in, you go, oh, boy, I might have to block a few more shots here. And that's not to take away from the backup goalie. That's, every goalie wants guys blocking shots for him. What goalie do you think saying to his team at the start of the game, hey, you know what, if you guys want to take the night off and give me like 4 or 5 breakaways, that'd be great. I'll just sit back there and knock guys out all night long, one-on-one. That'd be awesome. Any 2-on-0s? Bring it. They're not saying that. Kidding me right now? It's your job to play defense in front of them. Go do it. If you're not doing it, they put the other guy in. So the way the Ducks played the other night in front of John Gibson, he was great. He was great. This guy's a real deal. How about Anaheim? You talk about a wealth of riches in goal. Are you kidding me right now? Who are you comfortable with right now, Ducks fan? Jonas Hiller, John Gibson. Who do you want? I'll take the rookie. I'll take the rookie and I'll put him in. So that'll be interesting. My son asked me the other day, he said, you think Martin Jones will play for the Kings? I said, are you out of your mind? I said, if Martin Jones plays for the Kings, things are not good for the Kings. They're up 2-0 at this point, right? Martin Jones finished the game the other day for the Kings. And that's all I have to say about that. So it'll be a good night of playoffs with those games. And then the Game 7, Rangers, Penguins tomorrow. And then we'll find out. Well, we'll find out if anybody moves on tonight. And the Bruins, if they can get a win on the road, they move on. And then the Penguins, we'll see if they can tomorrow night. Well, we'll talk about this tomorrow, but we'll see if the Penguins fly or if they just simply choke. It'll be interesting. It's getting to be fun. That'll do it for another CBJ in 30. Thanks to Rob Mixer, my screener today. Thanks to Russ Mollahan, our director of broadcasting. You watch TV the whole time, but I'll say his name anyway. It's all right. He's helping out in some regard, I'm sure. I'm going to get fired from this job one day. Might be tomorrow. Thanks to you for your questions. We'll do it again tomorrow, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Until then, Bob McElligott saying so long.